Okay, so there's a couple things you need to know before we paint. You have paintbrushes, you have a well, and you have paint. You need to get a water source and a napkin. Make sure that whatever surface you're working on is paint safe, meaning if you accidentally get it on the table or a tray, it's okay. It's not gonna ruin it. I like to use glass because acrylic paint does not stick to glass. So even if the paint dries onto the glass, it'll still wash out. If it doesn't wash out, you can at least scrape it out and it's fine. I only fill it about halfway. Any more than that, you run the risk of splatter. That's not necessary. Napkin. If you choose to use a towel, which some artists are more comfortable with that, I don't. But if you choose to, just know that acrylic stains, it'll never come off that towel, so that is officially your art towel. Now the paints that you have, like I said, are acrylic. Use a little at a time because the minute they are exposed to air, they are starting to dry. And if you let them sit out, they'll get gummy, and that's not good. It's not a good painting. It's not good to paint with gummy paint. It'll totally ruin it. Now the colors that you have are pretty generic. It's a generic green, a generic yellow, same with the purple and well, white and black, of course. The reason being is that you can add black and white to them to darken or lighten them. If you think about a sunny day and you want shade, you would go under a tree or any place that would give you coverage so it's dark and cool and it's shade, dark. So you would shade with dark or black. Now if you want to brighten it, you would tint, which is white. And so that's about all I need you to know about the paints. But now I want you to know about brushes. Brushes are your friends. Take care of them. They are not cheap. You can buy cheap. They're not going to be worth anything for you. You want to make sure that you keep them nicely groomed. What I mean by groomed is when you're all done painting and you've cleaned your brushes with soap and water, that you've dried it off gently, and that you've taken your fingers and squeezed out as much water as you can without actually pulling the bristles out, and then left it to dry. You can leave it to dry face up or hang it off a sink, but don't leave them like that or the bristles will bend while it's drying and you will have a really bad brush. Now sometimes you have one that's got a bad hair day. Snip those little hairs off nice and high and you'll be okay. Now to clean a brush between colors or when you're all finished, you take your brush. I like to say, pretend that this is my cup full of milk. I just poured chocolate sauce in it. I want to make chocolate milk and it's all settled at the bottom. I take my AKA spoon and I stir it where the brush is literally hitting the bottom. You see how it fans out when it hits the bottom? Now I'm not jabbing it. I'm just dragging it almost like you're painting the bottom. Do it and, you know, kind of twist your hand a little bit and really get that paint out of there. And then you're going to gently drag it up the top of the glass. Come to your napkin. Drag and roll. Drag and roll. Don't do this. You will totally ruin your brush. And the main thing with acrylic paints is they are fabulous as acrylic paints alone, but if you water them down, you've made watercolor paints. So if you want a transparent looking painting, then you would dip in your water and then dip in your paint. This painting, we don't want to do that. We want to actually have just acrylic, which means after you've washed your brush, you drag it and you dry it. That's it. So I think we're ready to get painting. Start painting. Once again, there's no wrong way to paint things. If you want Maleficent to have green skin as opposed to purple skin, or if you want her to have yellow skin or black skin, it's totally up to you. Polka dotter, it's your art. You have the right to alter it however you like. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to work on the her face first. And in Mandy's, it looks like she has a little bit of a greenish hue. So I'm going to take a little bit of green. I'm going to come to my palette and put a little bit in there. Get most of it off. And then I'm going to come to my white and grab, scoop, scoop, scoop. And then I'm going to stir them up and try and get that soft, pasty green. You see that? A nice soft pasty green. And then I'm going to go ahead and start painting her. I'm not going to bend my bristles too much. I don't want a big fat chunky paint. I want nice delicate tiny little brush strokes. Know that acrylic paint will dry a little darker than what it is. So if you've made her really dark, you'll want to add a little bit of light to it because it's going to get even darker. And I'm going to go ahead and paint over her lips because it'll cover. I'm not painting over her eyes though. I feel like she needs to be lightened up, so I'm going to take a little of this white and start to blend it in. But I'm going to leave it dark around my edges. Blend it in, lighten her up just a touch. But I want to make sure that there's not a definite line between my light and my dark, so blend it out to the edge. You notice I'm not using a ton of paint. It's easier to add paint than to take away. So just a little at a time. Keep working at it until it's the way you like it. Still feel like she's a little too green. You know what? Let me go ahead and do her neck while I'm working on the coloring. So I'm going to go ahead and get the green off my brush. Dry it. And then take straight white. And I'm going to really work that white in there to lighten up that green. Drag it, drag it, drag it. I'm not worried about the facial features underneath. They will show up after we've painted them. I'm going to drag that white into the neck. Yeah, I think I like that. I know she's a little bit greener than the sample, but I kind of like that. So now I want to go ahead and work on the bird's chest. Why? Because it's white and I want to get the white parts knocked out. So go ahead and paint it white all the way. And you may ask, why are we painting it white when it's already white? Well, your paper is a dingy white. Your paint is a titanium white. And you will see a difference when you paint on it. Now I do want to take barely any paint on my brush of purple and stick it in this little crack. I'm going to start pulling it out. Pulling it out. Keep pulling. And the more I pull it out into that wet purple, or white, sorry, it's going to drag out into a blend. Notice that? It just keeps going and going and going, and then it's finally white. So I'm going to do it on the other side. Barely any purple. Stick it in here. Drag, drag, keep dragging, and it's eventually going to wear out of your brush and fade into white. Pretty cool, huh? That's how you make shadowing. Alright, so now it's time to do her face. And the reason I have her drawn like this is because I want to show you an up close on how to paint her in. And I feel like just showing you on the original might confuse you a little bit because it's a little far away. So I want to start off with giving her a white underglaze, I guess you could say. It's kind of like her foundation, just white. And you may ask, why white? It's because it's a great blender, and if you move fast enough, it'll help the green not make her look so sickly. She'll look nice and balanced as an evil villain. Now I'm going to take it barely any green, like literally wipe most of it off, and around your edges, start dragging it around. Don't let it dry on you. Keep tapping your brush in there. Drag, drag, drag. As you keep dragging, you're blending. Blending takes a little bit of practice to get good at, but it's the main concept is, you know, just like I was telling you about the chocolate milk. If you stir the, I'm putting more white on here, stir the chocolate and the brown chocolate and the white milk together, you're going to get that light brown chocolate because it's blended together. So once again, take barely any green on my brush with that wet white. Put it on that edging. I don't want to leave that line there, so I'm just going to keep tapping until the green fades into white. Boom. Pretty cool, huh? We're going to do it again on the bird, on his body. Clean your brush really well. Put your white on your bird. You can do half and half if you're worried about speed. So if we did half, barely dip in your purple. I mean, barely anything on there. Stick it in this corner, nice and dark in that corner. And start dragging it out. Little baby, tiny brush strokes. No, oh, see, it started to blend. It's like you can see that moment where it goes, oh, there it goes, I'm going to blend. And then you drag it out. Let's do it again. White. Take barely any purple. Come in here, stick it in this corner, and start dragging it out. Pull, pull, pull. And you can even do it along the bottom. White. Barely any purple. Drag, drag, drag. And there you go, you have a blended bird. Okay, as you can see, I have blended the bird and the face on my original. I made her a little bit darker than the one I had showed you. I just feel like the old Maleficent from Disney represents the real Maleficent. I really like that. So I went a little bit more green for mine. You can go more green, more yellow, whatever color you'd like it to be. Okay, so let's go ahead and start working on the background while these two dry. The background is going to be green and yellow. And you want to fill it in. What I normally do is I fill in some green, drag it around, then grab some yellow. Blend it. More yellow. Try not to go outside your lines. That's very important for this one because the picture is inside of the lines. If you do go outside of the lines, you're going to have to edge it with black, which we're going to do anyway, but you might just have to have a darker black line. So just keep grabbing yellow, grabbing green until you get the background the way you like it. Now you might ask, why am I going one section at a time when they're all green and yellow? It's because I'm going to twist my paper for each section, and that's going to make my brush strokes alter. See, these are going this way. These are going to go this direction. That's just going to give it an interesting visual texture. And because I'm not cleaning my brush, that mixture of greens and yellows are giving it a lime color, and it's just a really cool look. If you prefer more solid colors, then do solid colors. Just know that there are a couple of color combinations you do not want to do. The first one is Christmas colors, which is red and green. If you put red and green together, you are automatically making a brown, because there are 3 colors in the color wheel which are primary. You cannot make them, and that is red, yellow, and blue. Well, when you are mixing red and yellow, you're going to make orange. And if you mix yellow and blue, you make green. And if you mix red and purple, or red and blue, you make purple. But if you cross them in any way to where all 3 of those primary colors blend, you make green, or sorry, you make brown. I can't paint talk at the same time. So if you take purple, which is red and blue, and you mix it with yellow, you're mixing all 3 of the colors. If you take red and mix it with green, which is blue and yellow, you're mixing all of the colors. And if you mix blue with orange, which is red and yellow, you're mixing all of the colors. So if you mix all 3 primary colors together, you're going to have a brown picture, and you don't want to do that. So that's just something to keep in mind. We all know what colors make what. We learned that in kindergarten. But just don't blend all the primaries with secondaries, because you're going to make funky colors. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and you can pause it as well. And I'm going to finish painting my background and get back with you. Okay, so I'm back. I've done my background. And now I'm going to go ahead and start with the purple. Purple is going to be purple and white blended. We're going to start off with this area here. But these are solid purple, so you don't need to add the white to those. Just a solid purple. Don't bend your bristles and you won't get a fat line. If you bend your bristles, see how fat that line is? If you don't bend your bristles, you can get a nice skinny line. Got it? So nice skinny lines. You don't want big fat chunky lines. Make sure that you fill in all the little white spots, because they're not going to go away. It doesn't bleed. Acrylic paint stays where it is. Alright, so now let's go ahead. I'm going to give her some purple lips. Barely any paint on my bristles, and I'm not bending my brush. Boom. Alright, so now let's go ahead and do the bird. He is all purple, but he gets lighter as it gets further down. So this is a nice dark purple. And if you want to add a touch of black to it, you can as well, since it is the back. Add a little darkness in there. Tap in a little black. Now we're going to do this one. Make sure you don't drag your hand through wet paint. Now I know on paper, paint dries fast. You still have some wet spots, so be careful. I feel like it needs a little bit of black on the edges. Just barely any black. Drag, drag, drag. Remember, try and make everything match. So now, let's come on forward. little tidbit of info. Did you know that the little girl that plays Aurora in Maleficent, the movie, is actually Angelina Jolie's daughter? And the reason they had to use her, notice I'm taking a little white, they had to use her because Angelina Jolie looked so menacing in her makeup that none of the little actresses would go to her. But her daughter would, because she knew that was her mommy. So even if she was made up, her daughter would go to her and sit in her arms. So they gave the part to her daughter. I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so for this last bit, I want it to be really light. I still have a little purple on my brush. I'm just not even going to clean it off or wipe it off. I'm just going to go straight for white. Come in here. And that purple that's on my brush is going to tint this white lavender automatically. I have so much on my brush, I'll probably do both sides. I like the brush strokes that show. If you don't, just drag your brush through it many, many, many times and you'll get a nice solid coat. Okay, so there's our bird. And now we want to do the outfit that's peeping out from behind the scepter. I know there's a line there, but we'll paint it back in with the black. Just solid purple. Okay, now take a little bit of black, just a little, drag it down that line a couple times, and that's going to get that folded clothing look. So now we're going to do this side. Purple, solid purple. You notice the way I like to paint. Some people like it this way and some don't. I like to outline what I'm going to paint and then I fill it in. Barely any black on your brush. Let's see. Drag it down the middle. Drag it a couple times. Okay. Clean the brush. Wipe it gently. And let's go ahead and do the scepter. Yellow and white. Yellow and white. Tap it in. Yellow. And white. Tap it in. This one's just going to stay yellow, no white. And then we'll do more yellow and white. This little center jewel here, I'm just going to put yellow on one side, white on the other side, and where they meet I'm going to just drag my brush. You see that I just made an instant blend. Let's go ahead and do the yellow staff. Yellow all the way down, white stripe down the middle, drag it a few times, and it'll fade away. And what you've done is made a rounded scepter. Oh, I cleaned off my brush, but we got one more thing to do yellow, and that will be his beak. So dip it in your yellow, come on in. And I think I want to go ahead and put a little bit of white down the center and tap it to where it just looks like it's a shine. Okay, let's do the bird's head now. We're going to do purple Purple, purple, purple. Purple on the inside. It's okay if the pupils go away. You can paint them back in a second. Okay, now I'm going to barely take any black. I'm going to line the eye. Drag it out. Ooh, I got a little bit too much on there. Wipe off the excess off your brush if you have too much. And just keep dragging it into the purple. Alright, do it on the other side. Black. And you know what, if your purple starts to run dry, just add more. Got that bad little booger head. Alright, so now let's do the pupils. Solid black. Solid black. Clean the brush. Yellow talon. Okay, I'm going to wipe off the yellow from my brush, but, sorry I didn't slide that down, I just did yellow, solid yellow. I'm going to wipe off the yellow, but there's still some on there. I'm going to grab the white, I'm going to come in and I'm going to fill in this jewel because I want it to be mostly white. It can be a little bit creamy, but I want mostly white. Okay, I'll wipe it off. Barely tap that black, come in here, dot, dot, and though it's not in our sample, I'd like to give him a touch of a shine in his eyes. Barely any paint. Put the shine on both eyes. And that really just kind of brings him out. Speaking of eyes, let's bring her to life. Okay, the first thing we're going to do for her eyes is give them a nice whites of the eye. Then we're going to not clean our brush, grab, like barely anything on that tip. Like you can barely see any green at all. Come in here and barely tap that in. I know I'm using the word barely and it's really starting to get on my nerves, so I know it's getting on your nerves, but there's just not a word good enough to describe that. I mean, just a hint of color on that tip. Because a little bit goes a very long way. So wipe that off, grab your black, come in, fill in your pupils. If this makes you nervous, a Sharpie does amazing things for teeny tiny parts. So if you need to refer to a Sharpie till you're comfortable, by all means, but promise me you'll practice till you're comfortable enough to do it your own. A little bit of black. Let's go ahead and do these eyebrows. I'm not clumping it on the tip. I'm just tapping it in the paint to where it hardly even dents the paint to grab. I'm going to give her some eyelashes. And I'm going to give her some lower lashes. Eyelashes. And low ones. And just like the bird, I'm going to wipe off most of the black, come in the same place that bird's shines are, do it on her. And you know what? Do a little bit of a shine on her bottom lip. Barely any there. Alright, so now it's time to do her outfit. It's black and white. The same way you did the background, you're going to do the black and the white in different sections at a time. Outline it in black. You're going to have to work a little fast. Outline it in black, grab some white, and fill. Keep mixing it to where you have a nice little blend going on. Okay, the next one. Outline in black. Grab some white and blend. So you're going to do this with all of them. You don't want them all to be uniform. You want them all different. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while I work on mine. We'll do the headgear together. So go ahead and continue to fill in the rest of the robe with the black and white, and we'll get back together in a second. Alright, so I'm back. Hopefully yours is something similar to this. I'll zoom in. You notice you can see some of my brush strokes. It's not a bad thing if you have visible blending lines. It's okay. I like that look, as you can tell, because I do it. But like I said before, if you don't like it, keep blending your brush. Keep blending, keep blending. Okay, so I'm going to flip her upside down because I don't want to drag my hand through anything that might still be wet. Zoom in on her head. And we're going to go ahead and start on her headgear. So I'm going to clean my brush. Actually, you don't really have to clean it, but I just happened to toss mine in water before I started turning her around. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the back part first. This is next to the face. You got to be very, very careful by the face. You want that serious cut-in line. Come on in and drag it up. Notice every now and then I'll hit a spot that it takes me 3 or 4 brush strokes to get it just right. It's not like boom, done, boom, done. No, you actually have to work at a paintbrush and paint to work together. You gotta keep dragging them together, drag, drag, drag. Your paper has little porous parts to it. Sometimes the paint will skip over sections and sink into others, and so keeping that in mind, you might have to run your brush over it a few times. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this one as well. Okay, now I want to start on the little divisions, the sections. I'm not going to do these outside ones yet I'm going to go ahead and do a solid black here. I'm not too worried if it gets into the one that's in front because I'm going to be whiting it. Grab a little bit of white. Start blending in a gray. Where they meet, drag your brush a few times. Okay. Black on the bottom. White on top. Where they meet, drag your brush. If you find it's really chunky, take your finger and tap it. And you'll get a blend. You'll notice that very often for my lessons, especially if I'm coming off of doing a lesson with my students in the studio, you'll notice my hands are just covered in paint. I live that way. My family's used to it. Alright, so let's go ahead and do these. Black. I'm going to take barely any white. Blend that in. Barely any white. Blend it in. All I'm trying to do is highlight the little centers of each of these sections. So it's basically just a black section, or black, the entire thing. Wipe it off, grab a little white, highlight the middle. Grab your black, paint the whole thing. Grab some white, tap in the middle. It's a little too much. Okay, let's go ahead and do the middle. Dirty brush, wipe off most of the black, grab some white. Let's do the middle. It should start to be gray. More white. I'll add a touch more black to that. It needs to be a little darker. Where they meet, drag that brush a couple times. Tap, 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 and then you'll have a nice little blend. And now let's finish her off with just a gray point. Little black, little white. Together we'll make a pretty little gray. As always, with all of my lessons, or the lessons taught by my instructors, if you have questions or concerns or problems or tips or ideas, please don't hesitate to contact us. Our website has our contact information, and you can email, phone, or text. If it's really late, I appreciate it if you text. But I mean, anything from what kind of easels do you recommend to what's the best projects for 5-year-olds, or you ask it, I'll help you out. My goal is to spread art, so I'm here for you. Just keep grabbing white. There we go. All right, so let's take a look at her all the way. She's cool. She's really cool, but she's not done. She needs black lines, outlines completely. You can do this with your brush, or you can get a handy dandy Sharpie. If you use a Sharpie, then you are officially turning this into a mixed media project. You will have pencil, acrylic, and marker. I'm going to use Sharpie. It's easier to get precise lines. If you're really good at the paint, feel free to outline it with paint. It would be the same way we did the eyebrows and the eyes, by just barely using the tip of your brush. And I'll show you a sample of that as well. But if you use a Sharpie, just follow all of your pencil lines. But here's the key thing. Make sure your paint is fully dry before you drag your Sharpie through it, because the minute paint gets on this marker, the marker is no good. It does not like paint. Learned that the hard way. Okay. If you choose to outline it, you want to get a nice point to your brush, dip it in your paint, barely, look, let me zoom in for you. Let's see if I can zoom in any. Oh, I can't. Whoa, wow, that's close. Barely press. See that? I mean, it's just pulling paint off the brush. It's not even, the bristles aren't even touching. But if you're not comfortable with this, I do urge you to use a Sharpie permanent marker. Honestly, the Bics are fabulous as well. And I know that Target has a brand that's out, that's, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like Illuminates or something along those lines, and they are really good too. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and finish outlining. I have outlined her entire body and the bird. I want to outline these outer lines as well. Now you may be asking, why are we outlining? Well, we're giving the look of stained glass, quite simply. And when you have stained glass, it is basically glass that is cut into different shapes, typically organic shapes that make out a design when placed together. Well, you can't just glue glass together. It's not going to stay. So you have to surround it with a metal tape, and then you solder it. So these black lines that we're drawing represent the solder lines of stained glass. Now stained glass, it got its start really by churches. In the olden days, olden, before the Renaissance art, and right at the start of Renaissance art, especially in Italy, the average person who went to church could not read. So priests started commissioning artists to design stained glass windows depicting famous stories of the Bible. That way, when the parishioners were sitting there listening to the sermon, they could follow along with the windows. All right. Well, as always, as the artist, it is your job to sign your art. I like to date mine. I really enjoyed creating Maleficent with you. She is by far one of my favorite villains, if not characters. So thank you for taking your time. I know this was a long lesson, but it was worth it. If you are not happy with this go around with this Maleficent, I do urge you to use one of the extra sheets and try her again, because with practice comes talent. It comes more comfortable. You find that the more you paint, the easier it happens, it comes. So keep practicing, keep creating. I look forward to talking with you guys and learning and teaching in the future. So have a wonderful day. Thanks so much.